So today I did my first successful full video edit in Resolve, and I kind of had to wait to make this follow-up as the video was on a product that wasn't public yet. But that video will be going live by the time you see this now, so I can make this video. And theoretically, this video might be edited in Resolve, but the complexity of overlaying this footage, which is recorded separately on top of the screen capture, is probably going to prove too much for Resolve's motion controls, because that's one of my big hangups with it. But in this video, I'm going to walk you through the project that I did make. I'll go ahead and open it up here. And we're going to talk about what is holding me back from switching to Resolve, and what kind of my wish list is, what my hangups are, and some of the major issues that I've run into, but some of the things that I like and that I've enjoyed with it. I released 2 videos at the time of this week, at the time of recording, on the same day. One was edited in Premiere and was a 2x1 video review of the Mod Mic Wireless, and this one was my review of the Elgato Camlink 4K edited in Resolve. Now, I did go ahead and sync up. I had to do something fancy with the multiple audio track editing because some of my multiple audio track stuff is not working at all in Resolve. So I did go ahead and sync up the audio and do what I needed to do with it in Premiere, and then export it as a DNX HR file for me to edit in Resolve. So in the media, you can see I worked with a lot of different files. I have some ProRes 4.6K files from my Ursa Mini Pro. I've got the A-roll that was shot in OBS with the Camlink. I've got MP4s recorded with OBS from other test scenarios. I have other OBS tests. I have the unboxing recorded on my Panasonic G7. I've got my ad spot, which was rendered to Cineform. What else do I got? Some other graphics that I encoded to Cineform because of an issue I'll mention in a minute. I've got this Cineform file, which was supposed to be a GIF, but GIF importing did not work. I'll touch on that in a moment. A couple PNGs. That's about it. So I've got a bunch of different files here, and as mentioned, GIF importing did not seem to work, despite the fact that I saw other people in videos importing GIFs, but this file right here of these bouncing audio meters was a GIF that I screen captured using ShareX, and for whatever reason, importing the GIF, nothing happens here. I can actually go back and try it again just to show you, and keep in mind I am using the active directories that I have mapped in Resolve, because that's important for a lot of how this works. I go to GFX, this GIF file, drag it in there, never imports, and even if I navigate to the folder in the folder explorer, it just doesn't see it. Same thing with one of my After Effects graphics. I exported as an uncompressed AVI. It was the quickest to dump it to disk. I figured it has no codec, it is uncompressed, literally anything can import it. Once again, Resolve doesn't see it and won't import it. Very bizarre, and it's not just AVI as a container that it ignores, because it will import other AVI files. It just won't import the uncompressed from After Effects. Very bizarre. Just doesn't make any sense to me. We'll take a look at my timeline here. I learned as I went, so it was pretty fumbly and frustrating at first as I was mapping out keyboard extensions or keyboard shortcuts and things like that. But as I got most of my shortcuts turned over, like now I can zoom into the keyboard or to the timeline with S and D on the keyboard, which is just natural for me and how I've been doing it in Premiere. Moves really quickly. Markers are the same hotkey. I've extended them, highlighted specific clips, changed to marker color. All of that was super useful, and as you're playing back the file, it even shows it up in the preview what the marker is. Really nice. So the overall cut was pretty solid, and I went ahead and didn't do any color until the end, since I knew my main cut was going to be untouched. Since it was a capture card review, I wasn't going to apply any effects to it. And overall, that went fairly well, just going through here, and didn't run into any major issues other than just the slowdown of learning it with the A-roll. But then I started integrating B-roll, and for the most part, initially that went okay, and I even figured out finally the titler tool. There's a text and a text plus, and the text plus seems to produce a nicer text file, but seems to lack the drop shadow that the normal text has, and it might be somewhere here, but I could not find any instance of it, whereas the normal titler, if I just drag on a title here, the normal titler just automatically has different font style effects and a drop shadow panel and a stroke panel. Really easy to access, and there doesn't seem to be any drop shadow effect within the software anyway, which was frustrating for a couple graphics things that I was doing, and was just frustrating for the text that I couldn't add a drop shadow to. Not a big deal though, but what I have run into an issue with keyboard shortcuts. I set up F to be ripple delete, as you can see here. But at some point, it randomly just stopped ripple deleting. It's not ripple deleting anymore. Like, for example, if I hit F on this clip, it's just not ripple deleting. And typically that's done when there's a conflict of what the F key does, but nothing else is listing the F key as being it. But then I go over here to the delete key, you know, the one below insert. It keeps adding ripple delete back to the delete key. It doesn't make any sense. It is supposed to only be backspace. And instead backspace is now just delete in place without ripple deleting, but it keeps adding delete there. And so if I add F back, maybe it'll work this time, but it was working for about 20 minutes. And then when I reloaded the project at some point, it was just gone. So I've had some weird fiddliness with that. If I hit F, hey, ripple deleting's working again. Hopefully that sticks. I don't know why that changed. But for the most part, the new keyboard shortcut editor is very nice and totally ripped off from Premiere, but I am okay with that. And you can actually save presets and change between keyboard layouts, which is really handy. Unfortunately, there is no presets as far as I can tell for anything. No presets at all, whatsoever, period. So you can't do any keyboard shortcuts for presets because you can't even save presets in the first place. I would actually believe that if they had presets, their keyboard shortcut thing would let you shortcut them, but there isn't any. So this entire keypad full of macros that I've manually mapped to move the mouse to quickly apply presets of effects and transitions in Premiere, I couldn't even hope to move it over, like if I could figure out the scripting for it, because there's no presets in the first place. And it seems weird to keep harping on this, but I use a lot of effect presets, a whole heck of a lot. They're very important to my workflow. And not only are there no presets, most of these effects aren't in Resolve at all. Now, granted, most of these are third party because Premiere is weird about saving first party transition and stuff presets in the first place. But there's no black and white preset. I have to go through and manually drag down saturation and increase contrast. Like there's no just black and white filter from what I could see. My film impact transitions don't support Resolve at all. That's on them. But there seems to be very few actually like native supported transitions in Resolve at all. Very few to choose from in the first place, and very few like plugin suites that have released anything or anything like that. My Red Giant ones do. Although the default installer just installs them all at once, which chokes the Resolve loading screen. So you have to copy them out and manually copy them into the OFX plugins folder, or else you'll just never be able to launch Resolve again, which was a big problem for me when I was using earlier betas, and I couldn't figure out why it was giving me that trouble. But an issue I've run into is my Red Giant plugins are Windows only. And I just built a beefy Resolve on Linux render server, just as a project that I'm working on, and it won't work. I tried manually copying OFX files over. I figured they should still work if I just copy the manual plugin files over and into the correct directories and made sure all of that was correct. And it won't work at all in any projects with a minute, including this one, just kind of crash Resolve instead of opening. A little frustrating. So that became a big hindrance where I was like, okay, this has been really smooth sailing so far. Performance has been great. I've not had any major issues and the software hasn't really crashed whatsoever. Meanwhile, people in my Discord server are complaining about Premiere crashing multiple times in the one day. But transitions are an important part of my current style. I have been developing for a couple years now a very stylized look that is very important to me personally and the theme that I build on the channel here, and that involves transitions. And I can't really, I am sacrificing so much of that by not having those transitions and not having some of the effects that are available to me in Premiere. Now, initially when I was finishing up this project and working on that, I saw that as a roadblock, as that's one of the major hitches that's going to prevent me from ever switching full time. And that may still be the case, but it's also something that could challenge me creatively. As I was talking to one of my 3D printing buddies, Joel, tagged in a guy named, or by the handle of Kevlar Condom, who has gone through and makes a whole lot of, he used to work for Pixar, as I just found out, and has made a whole lot of practical transitions. And he uses mostly transitions based on matte transitions, which is a way of having like basically a transparency layer in the transition, and it's a video file instead of it built into the software actual transition. And he brought up a valid point that if you build your own and use them that way, then you truly own your transitions and have more creative freedom once you figure out how to build them. And so I think that's going to be a challenge for me creatively to build more of those and utilize those more effectively within my edits. There's some, however, that I can't fully do that with, which would be my impact wipes. I use the film impact transition set. I use the wipes, which are nice and feathered, and they look really nice. And while I love the built-in wipes in Resolve here, I'm going to see if I can find any because they're really freaking good. Yeah, here, right here. I wanted to record all of this. They are so smooth because you go over here, it's an edge wipe, and you can change colors of certain things. You can add I answered my own question by messing with something I didn't think I should mess with. Damn, okay, so I have just replaced my film impact wipes with these here because you can feather it and then the border controls the feather here. That was what I thought I was missing from film impact. And then you can control the angle and you have ridiculous amount of angle customizability here. And then you tell it to ease in and out and you have control over the transition curve. Record all of this raw first. And it is super, super smooth. They look really nice. As long as it's a consistent delay. I know that's a really silly thing to like obsess over, but that's something that was like very important to me. But again, I come back to when I'm sitting there editing, when I have a bunch of clips that I need transitions on as I'm editing, I just reach over and smack a hotkey that applies a transition where my cursor is and I keep editing. I don't have that option here, and I don't even have the ability to load presets by mouse. I have to sit here, find the edge wipe, drag it over, line it up properly, because half the time it doesn't want to apply transitions for some reason. Like sometimes it'll just drag it over and be like, nope, and never pop up the little curve bar here where I can actually change where the transition is. And so it takes a couple times, it's a little fiddly. And then I have to come over here to the settings in the inspector panel, which may be closed because I use the source monitor a lot. So I got to open the inspector panel, scroll down here, change the angle, get it exactly as I want, or type it in, change all these settings to how I want, and then move along. And unless I'm missing something so blindingly obvious, like I don't even see where I would call presets from in the effects panel. There's just no support for it. And I'm getting worked up, but this comes from a place of passion, not really even a place of like being angry with the software, because like this is something that I'm probably going to put up with it for some videos that I know it can handle the workflow of. But this is going to be such a strong source of inefficiency in my editing that I really hope someone will push kind of my wish list here to the team and they can kind of work on these things, because I feel like these are things too that are very important to making Resolve accessible to many other workflows. This and the whole customizable UI thing that I was waiting to rant about. This UI is not customizable whatsoever. It is super rigid. The dual monitor one just sucks and takes up your full screen, and so then I can't browse other windows easily. It is horrible, and it is so inefficient for someone that is building daily videos, and in fact, I was editing multiple videos in one day. It is so inefficient and not conducive to that kind of editing. And I'm sorry, but though all of those of you who seem to think that I'm locked in a Premiere or Windows workflow and I just need to learn something else, I am learning it. It still sucks. Dockable and customizable UI panels is not a Premiere exclusive thing. They did not invent it. That is not what makes Premiere Premiere. That is a staple of most modern production software, or most software in general. That is a requirement for me for a software to seem competent in my mind. And I realize that's not true of everyone, but most software has this. And if you want your software to be usable for people of many different workflows, this is a very important factor. And a computer software, it should adapt to the user and the user's needs, not the other way around. So wishlist so far: GIF support, uncompressed AVI support, dockable, customizable UI panels. I'm pretty sure the way this is set up, it can support it. They just need to make it more obvious to be able to do so, or just give me dockable controls. It is doable. This team has already done some really cool stuff, like the updates to the smooth timeline and things like that has been really, really nice. There, like all of that, the new animations for it and stuff is spot on. The 15.2 update has been amazing. I have been blown away by it. There is one little issue when I am playing back footage and I watch my footage as I'm cutting at, a faster speed. I hit L once to speed it up a little bit. The playhead doesn't move with it when you're moving at a faster speed. I'll show you here real quick. Capture card. And that's what I was running at. And every once in a while, it might look a little out of sync. Hey, okay, now it is. At 4K and 1080p. This might be the case if you're camera. You want to test this if you can, because the HDMI out at 1080p was pretty good. In the last project I was just editing not 20 minutes ago, it wasn't doing it. Now it's doing it. So, bug. It took me forever to figure out audio keyframing because the thing wouldn't come up. Like, it's still not coming up now. Like, if I adjust audio levels here, there's a little icon. Oh, now it comes up. If you start adjusting at levels, then finally this curve editor comes up, and then you can start adjusting curves, and it's way more confusing than keyframe editing has ever been in just about any software I've ever used. Like, okay, I'll show you a quick example here. If I keyframe, and I say I want everything here, keyframe, or like, nope, it's gone. It's just gone. This is part of my confusion. So, but, hello? There we go. Yeah, like this doesn't update in real time. It only updates after I change it. And like, I would think if this is a keyframe at this point in time, it's supposed to stay in this spot and then you curve it up after this. But instead it just moves everything. You have to go through as if it's like a curves wheel, a color wheel on like Lumetri or something, and set like multiple points and then edit between them. And even then, like, it doesn't do what I expect. I don't know. It's confusing, and that's not necessarily their problem or something that I need them to fix. I just need to learn more, but it's really going to slow me down. Like, that is really baffling for some reason to me. Like, that's just not how keyframes work in Adobe and not how I think I remember them working in Vegas. Very weird. Oh, another thing I ran into which drove me nuts and about ruined some of these graphics. All right, so I have this image here. I push in because I don't have any of my other transitions. And then I have it scaling in. And when I was messing with the scaling settings, which is under the inspector panel here, you have your transform tools. So I keyframed that, and basically I set the keyframes here, and then I changed it here. But then I went down, and whether I tried this on a few different clips, and whether I enabled this first or after, if I enabled dynamic zoom, so I can ease in and out, so that, it eases in and out. You hit F9 on the keyframes in After Effects. This is what I use for everything. It changed how the keyframes worked. Like, it changed the positioning. Like, look at this. That's not... It's cut off. Like, it changes where the positioning ends up. And half the time, if I set it, like, it would just, like, start it off in random places and just totally ruin the edit. And I have no clue what's going on here. Again, I will have to look deeper into it, but so far it just makes absolutely no sense and is ruining my motion. And I would love to see here in the transform tools, there might be something to do with the yaw and pinch. No, that's 3D transform. That's actually cool that it exists. I want to see a shutter angle for a motion blur. That is something that the actual transform effect in Premiere can do, or you can just much more easily use the motion control tools, hit it over to After Effects, and enable After Effects as motion blur. That is something IMO very important to my motion scaling that I do. And I honestly don't see a whole lot of way to do that here. There is under motion effects, there's a motion blur thing here, but I don't know if that affects it. Like, does that actually give it blur? Like, if I just give it a crap load of motion blur, I don't think anything's... Oh, that was on the wrong clip. No, it's on the right clip, motion blur. I don't think it's doing anything to the clip. Like, I feel like that's separate to the color stuff for some reason. Like, there doesn't seem to be any motion blur there. So that's a little frustrating. What else was there? Oh yeah, just in general, I had frustration, ironically enough, since that's what everyone brags about. But with the color panel, like when I was editing camera raw files, the Cinema DNG or the BlackMagic RAW, you had this whole... My heat's kicking on, I apologize. I've been recording for a while. this whole camera raw panel where you could adjust all these things that are in the Lumetri panel of color grading in Premiere Pro. But without it, you don't seem to have access to any of that. And I'm not super good with curves yet. I'm still learning them. They've always been mind-boggling to me, but I figured out a nice curve that looks nice here. But you get wheels, you get curves, you get bars, but you don't get access to the basic like post controls of exposure, highlights, shadows, things that Lumetri gives to you. So I would love to see a Lumetri panel for Resolve. That'll never happen, but that would make my day. That would make my life so much easier, because otherwise, honestly, like, I'm not having a good time color grading non-raw footage in here, which is really frustrating because there's not going to be any point to bringing Premiere footage or footage from Resolve into Premiere to color grade and back into Resolve. Like, that would be the most counterintuitive workflow in the world. I realize, again, that's something I need to learn, but ease of use, accessibility, I don't even know where some of these controls that I would want to change like are. Like, these are the hue curves that they only just added to Premiere, so those are cool, but the actual like aspects of the image that I control and everything else, I don't know. It's really bizarre. All right, it's the next day or the day after that. I'm editing this video real quick. One thing that also prevented me from even editing this video itself in Resolve is it doesn't seem to have proper support for multi-track audio. It seems to support multi-channel audio. So if you have surround sound or multi-track embedded in a multi-channel file, because it can import up to like 12 audio channels and import multi-channel audio from like BlackMagic capture cards, but multi-track audio that I use daily for virtually everything in OBS Studio, it only seems to load the main bus, which was an issue for like Premiere Pro CS6. And that was fixed in later versions. And it doesn't, like, the audio syncing tools still aren't there yet. They're still very problematic. Like, they're supposed to be there, but it doesn't work. And that's something that is just 2 clicks. I select my audio and my camera file. I hit merge clips and it's there in Premiere. And again, very important to my workflow that I use daily. So those are some big hangups that there aren't even easy workarounds without just editing the audio track layout in Premiere and then bringing it over to Resolve, and then I lose flexibility of changing that later. So that is a major, major hang up for me right now, which again is part of my daily, virtually every project workflow. So that's going to be one of those walls that prevents me from going too much further, just in terms of overall like full-time switching. I'm doing these kind of dialoguing as I go walkthrough videos to show my process in the decision making of choosing video editors and my workflow, and as I'm learning, because I like documenting these things. And I realize that a lot of this comes down to me needing to learn more. There's just so much to learn, and it's so counterintuitive compared to every other NLE I've edited, not just Premiere. And I realize that'll maybe some of the transition-y and effect stuff that I want to do might be buried here in Fusion. But this looks like pure masochism, and I don't know when, if ever, I'm going to learn this. This looks like hell for effects. I don't know. I realize it's way more powerful than everything else, and I would never argue otherwise, but these are not things I wish to mess with most of the time. Fairlight, I didn't even touch. I used it when I was, well, no, I opened it when I was trying to find the audio keyframing things, but otherwise, I don't think I have a use for it right now since I don't mix like surround sound, but we'll see, maybe at some point. And then delivery-wise, the new NVIDIA encoder for H.264 is blazingly fast. This is a 12.5-minute long 4K 30 FPS edit, you know, with effects, with transitions, the OFX. Okay, so the rendering process, I actually screen captured some of this. The rendering process for pretty much all of the footage was double real time. So it's a 30 FPS project. It was rendering at 60 FPS, going 2 times speed. But then it would get hung up on the OFX transitions, the more intensive transitions, and the Red Giant OFX transitions that I was using. Those would go at like 1 to 2 frames per second. Still better than Premiere at times, because Premiere will just like totally stall out for 10 minutes at a time, freaking out the graphics card VRAM, because editing 4K footage maxes out your RAM and VRAM usage even on a 1080 Ti, which is insane. Even in Resolve, it'll use all my VRAM. So those transitions would slow it down to a crawl, but otherwise, and the normal non-OFX transitions, like the little wipes and things like that, those were instantaneous. So it was super smooth timeline editing performance. I was never below the 30 FPS other than those transitions. Like, it was silky smooth. Editing was so silky smooth, or rendering was so silky smooth. It was so freaking fast. Like I said, with this NVIDIA encoder, since I have an NVIDIA GPU for an H.264 file, I just set it to best automatic, basically, and told it to run a 12.5-minute 4K video. It rendered in 8 minutes and 57 seconds. That is freaking insane. That is so mind-blowing, so much better than Premiere in so many ways. But there's these crucial, like, creative things that I just don't think I can do in this software that will limit me and will be the reason that I don't do it, or that I don't use it more if I wind up not using it more. And that's pretty frustrating, to be honest. You see this other canceled job here? I did actually try. I was going to run a H.265 render because I wanted to see what the render time compared to, because if it's using the NVIDIA encoder, it might still be really fast. And it made it through like a third of the video really, really fast. But it hit one of the Red Giant transitions and it just said render failed due to GPU frame error or something, which is something I run into a lot in Premiere. So Red Giant is clearly just not great at the moment with GPU usage. And keep in mind, I've turned off Windows 10 game mode. I've actually enabled message signal interrupts. Instead of being polling its interrupt mode on my GPU, thinking that would fix things. It seems to have sped up performance in certain areas a tiny bit, but hasn't fixed it. I have another error down here. Yeah, some of the transitions were giving me these weird node errors when they wouldn't apply. I don't know. So yeah, so this has probably been a freaking ridiculous. Yeah, this is like a 30-minute long video. People are interested in this, so sorry that it's long, but I am in love with Resolve and wanting to kill it at the same time. It has been a blast to edit in, but at the same time made me tear my hair out. And for a video that I was kind of stupid, I used this for a video that I had a very short deadline on. It was an interesting experience. I really, because of the performance things and the few things that it does do so much better than Premiere, I really want to switch to it. And I will continue trying to over time, because it's never an overnight thing. Never. You wouldn't want it to be anyway. But I want to use it more because of these things and because of the rock solid stability. Like I said, it never actually crashed at all. But there's some of these big creative hiccups that until I find major workarounds, and even like the color grading stuff, like unless I don't want to shoot raw for everything, so color grading's been a nightmare. I'm gonna be going back and forth for a little while until I figure these things out. If you do have suggestions for any of the issues that I've mentioned, please let me know in the comment section down below. I would love to learn, and there's not a ton of coverage from my level of YouTube enthusiast, semi-professional kind of workflowy stuff, and I would love to see more of it, and I would love to hear what you have to say or what you have to suggest to fix my problems. Please let me know in the comments below if you have experience with Resolve. If you don't, stay out of it. And if you happen to have an opportunity to forward this to the people at Resolve to have them fulfill my wish list, especially the UI stuff, please do. I'm EposVox, here to make tech easier and more fun, sometimes more difficult, like this video. I'll see you next time.